Hey everybody, Lars here. Time to talk about the first half of Unit 2, where we deal with different kinds of sequences. We're going to go over some stuff with strings, and we're going to go over some stuff with lists, and then we're going to have a little bit of fun, and we're going to do some stuff with reverse indexing and printing strings and things along those lines. So I prepared some code for us, so let's jump right into it. Let's see, that stuff's for later. This is the string stuff. Let me get a nice little screen here where we can run it, and then we're going to talk about the code after we've run it. Let's put that right there, and this can be right there, and then we can talk about it as things go. All right, good. So you see this code over here. I have some comments, things like that, and then I define a string. I use double quotes because I'm an old dog, and a lot of programmers for C and Pascal and stuff, we use double quotes back in the day. I think you use double quotes in Java too. But in Python, remember, you can use either or. And as a matter of fact, I think if you looked it up, the default for Python would probably be the single quote, because I think that's how they do strings more often. Again, I've said this before, I think, but you can switch back and forth as long as you're consistent. If you want to use single quotes inside your string, use the doubles as a delimiter. If you want to use doubles inside your string, then use the singles as your delimiter. And you can go back and forth. Anyway, I create a variable, my string here, and I assign it this long string, which I think is 43 long. And we're going to see why that is, how that is in a second. So I have this string. And a string is nothing but a long line of alphanumeric characters. A string is, if you have experience with other languages, it's a little different than an array in a Python context. So don't think, oh, definitely array, blah, blah, blah. But it's close to it. It's almost like you can think of it as an array of alphanumeric characters, because we're going to be able to index into it. We're going to see that in a second. We have a built-in function. You can see idle making it purple, called len. And we can check out the length of the string. So when we run len, we come over here to the run, and we see that it's 43 characters long. Okay? Now, for the first time, we're going to see that we can index into this string. So what if I just want to print the character that's in the 5 spot? So print my string 5. So you say, okay, the 5th spot, 1, 2, 3. Blanks count. They are characters. So that would be 4, and then the R would be 5. So I think, okay, I'm going to get the 5. Dun, dun, you don't get the R. You get the A, because what you need to remember now, and for the rest of this course, and for the rest of your lives, for the rest of your programming career, is that we're computer scientists. So we start counting at 0. Okay? So that T right there, the first item in the string, is 0. That's the 0 spot. 0, 1, 2, 3 is the blank. 4, 5 is the A in rain. So if we just print that spot, we come over here and we see that we get the A. Okay? Now, for the very first time, I believe, in this course, we are looking at an interval. Now, intervals in Python, and we're going to see this, later when we do loops with range. Intervals are a little unique in that when I do an interval, the first part of the interval is what I want, and the last part is the first thing, and you're going to hear me say this all the time, it's going to get boring, the first thing that I don't want. It's exclusive. So the beginning of the range is inclusive, and the end of the range is exclusive. Okay? So if we take a look at this example where I have 5 and 15, I want to start at 5. Well, because I did that before, I know I start with the A in rain, so I know I'm in good shape. And then I go 5, 6, 7, 8 for that spot, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 is the I. So the I is the first thing that I don't want. So I print ein and spa over here. I don't print the 15th one. I go from 5 to 14. That's exclusive. That's going to come into play later on when we start playing around with our slicing at the end of this video. Okay, so remember that. So remember, intervals in Python. First thing you want, first thing you don't want is the end of the interval. All right? Now, if you've ever dealt with strings in other languages, sometimes you don't get an out-of-bounds error if you try to index past the string. Now, my code has run here because I've said print my string of 42, and it's printed the end, so it's printed the last item. And you might be saying, hey, when I ran the len, it was 43. Well, that's right, because I went from 0 to 42. So I have 0 to 42. But what if I put in a 43 and rerun this code? Python tells me, no, we don't allow that. You have a string of length 43, and you just asked for the 44th item. So that's an out-of-bounds error. We don't let you do that. There are other languages, C pops into my mind, that don't care. They'll say, okay, you want the 44th thing from the beginning of this string? You got it. We'll do that for you. And sometimes it's not exactly what you want. Python won't do that. Python will throw an error. So I'm going to correct that and get us back here in the land of the living. Let me put it up there so we can see it. Okay? You can use math inside of your index. So if I want to get the 9th item, okay, I can do 12 minus 3, or I can do things like that. You might be saying, and you can see that it prints the 2 eyes right there. And you might be saying that's a bit much. What if, when am I ever going to do that? You'd be surprised. You might have a large string of maybe 40 X's and O's for a video game context perhaps, and you want to add different items to go get another item. And you have some kind of system where that's how you go and get your particular characters and stuff like that. Sometimes it comes in handy. Sometimes it actually works that way. So you can definitely do math inside of your indexes. You can also, and I don't think I do it here, but you can also use variables inside of your indexes as well. Okay. There are also what we call methods on the string later, and I don't want to confuse you, but later in Unit 5 we're going to talk about objects. But right now all you need to know is that when you create a string, you're creating a little object that has little mini programs that can run on it. So here I use some of them. I do the upper, where it just takes everything and makes it uppercase. You can see it right here. Okay, and then here I do a replace, and I replace Spain with France. See? So what was this one? That was upper. And then the rain in Spain falls mainly on the plain. Why did it print it again? Oh, because I wanted to show you that you saw how we did the upper and it printed uppercase, right? But then I print it again and it's not uppercase anymore. That's just going to give you the string in uppercase, but it's not going to maintain that change. So the string is still just the plain one. It's the same thing with the replace. See? I did a replace with Spain and France and printed it out, but now I print it again and it goes back to normal. Okay? If you'd like to, as you can see what I do down here, is you can set it to a new variable name. Okay, so if I replace Spain with Germany, and then I print the new string, I get the rain in Germany falls mainly on the plain. Okay? So that would, you're not supposed to change strings. Once you create a string, you can't really change it. They're called immutable, but you can always make a change with these little programs and assign it to a new variable, so you can get that change. You just have to create a new variable and do it that way. Okay, so there are ways to do that. As you can see, there's another little method that we have called count. So if I want to count the ends in the string, I can come in here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So there's 6 of them, and that's what you get. Okay. So these are some of the features and facets of strings. You can figure out how long they are with the len function. We're going to look at len with our lists in a second. Now we can index into them. So we can go grab a particular item. We can go grab a slice or a section of different items. Okay, it would be called a substring in a Java context. You're not allowed to go out of bounds as far as referencing your string. The string does say, hey, I've got a certain limit here and I want you to stay in there. Okay, you can do math inside your index, and there's a whole bunch of different methods. If you go to the online documentation for Python, you'll see that there are other string methods that you can use and learn about for formatting and things along those lines. All right, so that's pretty much the deal on strings. But now I'm going to go 1, 2, 3 on 1, 2, 3, and I'll save that for last. All right, and now we're going to run a list. Okay, and like we do in the slides, all I did was create a simple list with my dopey name. 4 items, LARS, alphanumeric characters. Okay, and then I print it. When I print it, it doesn't print nice like it would a regular string. It prints the list. It begins with a bracket, ends with a bracket, and shows you the individual constituents. It also shows us that there are single quotes around it, so we know it's a string. It's basically a 1-character string. Okay, so I can print a certain item in that list and index into my list the same way that I did with a string. So I want item 2. So that's 0. Remember, we start counting with 0. That's 1. The R is 2. So when I print my list of 2, I get the R. Okay? Now, you might be saying to yourself, okay, this is starting to look like a string. What's the difference here? Why do I need to bother with all of that stuff? And there's two differences, and they're super important. The first difference, as you can see illustrated in this line right here, I'm going to the second item, and I'm going to assign it a 7, and then I'm going to print it out. Well, if you tried to do that with a string, you'd get a big error. Strings are what's called immutable. You don't change them. Lists are mutable. You can change them on the fly. So when we replace that item and then print it out again, look at that. LA7S. We were allowed to go in and replace that particular item. All right? Also, and this is the most important thing, my lists assigned to 2.33, a string, an integer, another list. You're not restricted as far as data types are concerned. With a string, it's just alphanumerics. It's just words. Okay? With a list, you can put anything in the list. An integer next to a float, next to a string, next to a boolean, next to a list, another list. And you're going to learn later when you create your own objects and you create your own data types, you can put them in your list too. Lists, and I say it all the time, lists are like empty bookcases. Can you imagine how great life would be if you could just grab an empty bookcase and put it in front of you? Oh, it would be wonderful. That's what it is in programming. If you want a spot to put something, because say you're looking at 100 different items and you want to determine which one is greater than 100. Well, when you find one, boom, put it in your bookcase, put it in your bookcase, put it in your bookcase. That's what lists are. They're differentiated from strings because they're all data types. They're not just alphanumeric characters. And they're mutable. After they've been created, you can change them. You can go to this slot and change that item with this item or this item with that item. So they're very flexible. They're very changeable that way. As you can see here at the very end, I use the append method, and I pop in a string called one more item at the end, so that when I run things and I print it again, you can see it has one more item. Were I to run a len on that, it would no longer be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It would be 6. Let's prove that. Let me do that. Print len my list 2. So now when we run that, we get a 6. Why do we get a 6? Oh, because there's 6 items. Well, that would help. So if we ran a len up here, we'd only get 5. Okay, but here we get the 6 because it's 6 items. The integer, the float, the string, the integer, the list. See? And then the string, one more item. All right? So lists are very important. Plus, you can go grab a blank list anytime you want. Anytime you want, you can just say my list 33, and then open bracket, end bracket, boom. You've declared an empty list. Now, if we print it, there'll be nothing there. Okay. My list 33 not defined. Oh, because I didn't do the uppercase. So my list 33 is good. And as you can see, it's just a blank list. So it comes up with a blank list. So do I want to add something to it? I can say my list 33 dot append, and I'll put in 33. Okay. And then I will reprint it. I'm going to be a smart doopy though. And I'm going to cut and paste. And now it's got a 33 in it. Okay. So strings and lists, we're going to learn this a little bit later on, actually in the second part of the second unit when we learn about loops and navigating through our data. These are sequences. These are ways of putting our data in order, be them words and strings, and going around and manipulating and going around to different spots that way, or with lists, and to be able to save things in lists and move things and or switch things. We're going to be doing that later. Okay? So that's basically strings and lists. Not a crazy difficult concept. It's almost like this is how we're going to sequence and store our data when we start dealing with data as we go on down the road and learn how to be programmers and learn how to do a little bit of data analysis. So now, the very last thing I'm going to do in this video is that everything? Is that we're going to have some fun. All right. We are going to talk about some of the idiosyncrasies of Python that it does when it prints. I guess I could leave things down here. I'll probably zoom in. Let me do that. All right. I got a string 4 here, and I've assigned it hello world. Happen to know that's 11 characters. Been doing this a while. So I print string 4, and when I do that, You can see it just prints hello world down there. I don't like that. Make it long enough so I don't get that behavior. Here's a little bit of OCD for you. So I print string 4 and I get hello world. That's great. So now I realize, okay, I'm in the world of indexing. So I can print string of 1. Do I need that last one? No, I do not. And I will get E because I get the second character right there. If I ask for string of 0, I'll get the H, and that's all great. Now I can ask for the 11th item. And oh, dun, 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 I'm out of range because I'm starting at 0 and I'm going to 10. So the last thing I can really ask for is the D because that's the 10. But now, hold the phone. I'm going to use an index. So now if I use that 0 and 10, well, I'm missing the D because the end of the index is the first thing I don't want, right? So I do that. Now I'm back in business. So I can't use 11 in a single character context because it throws an error. But I do want to use it in a interval. Okay? Now, what if I said that 12 was the first thing that I didn't want? A little weird, right? I mean, I've got 11 characters. What if 12 is the first? Well, there is no 12. So it should break, right? It really shouldn't work. No, it works. So then you say to yourself, well, that's a little weird. Well, what if I just did something stupid big? You know, that's going to break, right? That's not going to break. I don't know what I've done. I've done 8,000 in other videos. I'll do 10,000. No, screw it. I'll do 1,000,000. Is that 1,000,000? No, that's 1,000,000. I'm going to do a string from 0 to 1,000,000. Still works. Okay? I think I know why. It's a little idiosyncrasy in Python. If you want to just make sure whatever the string is, you print it all the way to the end. Why you just wouldn't use the regular variable name, I don't know. Okay, but at the end of this range, you can make things arbitrarily large. But I have that 12, and it runs, and everything is good. The minute I do that, out of range. Got trouble. Okay, so now let's go into another topic. A couple years back, I had a student come up to me and say that they wanted to print hello world, but they wanted to do it with reverse indexing. Now, if you know about reverse indexing, it's where you start counting from the right-hand side and go forward. So that D wouldn't be a 0, it would be a -1. So that's your 0. That's your -1, -2, -3, -4. So if I wanted to print out -1 and get that D, I could do it like that. Now, if I wanted to do a range and get, say, 4 to -1, then I would get the RLD by doing that. So I could do that, okay? Oh, you'll notice something. You didn't get the D because it's an interval, and the -1 is the first thing you don't want, okay? Now, another thing you probably noticed is, well, that doesn't make sense. Wouldn't I want to do -1 to -4? And when you do that, Python just gives you a blank. When Python prints strings, Python doesn't want to go backwards. It wants to go forwards, okay? Now, I can force the behavior in a sense by using that third parameter and telling it to go backwards, all right? So now when I do it, I get DLR, okay? So I'm going to start at -1. I'm going to get DLR, and the first thing I don't want will be the -4 or the O, okay? Because I've gone backwards. That Python can deal with, okay? It gets a little confusing and a little weird. This is what the student asked me. The student asked me, hey, I want to print hello world forwards, but I want to just use reverse indexing to do it. So we said, okay, where would you start? Well, you'd want to start with the first thing you want, which is -11, right? And then you would go to -1. As you know, and we're going to do it, that'll print hello world forward, but you're missing the D because -1 is the first thing you don't want, so you're not going to pick up the D. So the student now says, logically, in my opinion, okay, well then first thing I don't want is 0. So let's put the 0 in there, but when you print that, you get nothing, because now Python doesn't like going forwards and backwards, because technically negative 11 is the H, 0 is also the H, if you think about it. So it's not like Python knows, hey, we're in a reverse indexing context. You know, now you've given it something really weird. So there's really a couple of different ways to tackle this. The first thing I did was I told the student, look, why don't we do that? And we're pretty close, right? Then what we can do, when you use a plus sign with strings, it doesn't add them technically because they're not numbers. What it does is it slams them together. And in computer programming, we call that concatenation. So now I can concatenate that last digit on there, because I can't use the -1 in my interval. It's the first thing I don't want. But as a single character, I can go grab it. So I'm going to get hello world, with, you know, just up to the L by doing that. And then I'm going to slam the D on the end of it by adding string of -1. So when I do that, what did I do wrong? I didn't put the 4 there. You will be able to read errors that fast very soon as well. So now, using just reverse indexing, I have printed hello world. Okay? Now, there's another way to do it that gets a little kooky, but I'm going to do it anyway. All right. Let's say I want to do it this way. I want to start with -1. I'm going to go to a -11, but I'm going to go backwards. What would happen if I did something crazy like that? All right, I get the same behavior we had up there, but now I'm missing the H on the front, and it's all backwards. Okay? So now I ask myself, what if I then ask for a 12? Because the 12 will be the first thing I don't want there, and I'm going backwards. Now will I pick up that H? Turns out the answer is yes. So now, using this, starting at -1, going to -12, the first thing you don't want, in a backwards context, you do get hello world backwards. But remember, the student wanted to print it out the right way and just use reverse indexing to do it. So I'm going to show you a little trick. And basically, we're going to look at this. We're going to use this trick in Unit 3 when I do my little homework assignment, because it's kind of convenient to look for palindromes this way. What if you have a string and you want to print it backwards? Okay? So I have string 1, 12, 4. Everything in these parentheses can be treated as this string. Hello world backwards. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap it in another set of parentheses. And I'm going to, ready for this? Index, no, brace. I'm going to index into this string, which is just this right here. So I have an index here, but now I'm going to do another index because I wrapped it in parentheses. So I'm going to index into the results of this. And what I'm going to do is very simple. Start from the beginning, go to the end, but print it backwards. Okay? And you're going to see this is how we're going to detect strings that are palindromes later. We're going to test the equivalency of a string and itself backwards. That's what a palindrome is, right? So now I've taken this thing right here, which is hello world, and I said, you know what? Just give it to me backwards. This is confusing. And now I did it. So now, again, just using reverse indexing, we've printed hello world. That is how weird the printing can be in Python. If any of this was super confusing, then feel very free to forget about it. Okay, I just figured I'd show you some cool stuff and some of the idiosyncrasies. Remember that you have reverse indexing. Believe me when I tell you, reverse indexing is going to come in very handy for you in a particular assignment that's coming up a little. All right? Knowing how to deal with intervals. Knowing how to deal with intervals when they go backwards. Again, I've said it before. I'm going to say it again. Playing around with this stuff is how we learn. You have to tinker. You can't just do the assignments. If you just do the assignments, you're not going to know enough at the end of the course to get things done quickly, because you need to practice. And when you practice, you will get the the basics down so that they're second nature to you, and you can worry about the more complicated stuff when it's time to learn that at the end of the course. Okay? So I beg you, tinker. Play around with this stuff. Some of it is fun. You know, if you run into some interesting stuff when you print or anything like that, put it in the forums. Okay? Do things like that. And at the end of the day, the simple stuff will be second nature to you. And that's how programmers learn, and that's how programmers build their skill sets. Because programming is a pyramid. You do the basics, more stuff, more stuff, more stuff, more. You build and you build and you build. All right? So we are going to do an honest to goodness grand finale. And run everything. All right. And there we go. So we did strings. We learned about the length of strings, how to sub-string and slice into them, and how to get individual characters. And we learned how to change some strings, but strings are immutable, so we can't really keep that change unless we assign it to a new variable. Then we looked at lists and how lists are different. The two ways that lists are different are important to remember. The first is that lists are mutable. You can change things and switch things out in different spots. And the other thing about lists is that they are completely mixed when it comes to data types. You can put any kind of data type you want. So you can mix and match your data types in lists, and the slots are mutable. So it's a great thing to have in Python. It's a great, what you're going to learn later is that it's a data structure, and it's a really good data structure to have because you can put things in lists. All right? And then the very last thing we did is we played around with some code, and we did some things as far as the print is concerned. I'm going to leave this just like that so you can see it. I am going to take string lists, and I'm going to put it up in your files for the Unit 2 files for the course. So you have it, so don't think you have to type in any of this. You can go right up to Canvas and go grab it and get it that way. Okay? All right. Stay tuned, because in a couple of days, the second review video for Unit 2 is going to follow, and then there's going to be some individual stuff on the Project Euler stuff. All right? All right, then I'm getting out of here. You have a good night, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.